The modern construction or demolition site is a marvel of acoustic engineering. If you stood on a major metropolitan project 2 decades ago, you would have been assaulted by an unrelenting cacophony of industrial noise. The rhythmic, skull rattling thud of a hydraulic breaker, the throaty roar of a diesel engine, and the metallic clatter of tracks on rubble. It was deafening, brutal, and honest. But step onto a premium site today, and you might wonder if you've accidentally wandered into a library. The industry has entered the era of the whisper. Driven by stringent local authority regulations and a sudden corporate desire to be seen as a good neighbour, the sector has waged a highly successful war against decibels. We have noise monitoring rigs permanently fixed to site boundaries, silently beaming real-time data to stakeholders the second a sound wave dares to exceed a pre-agreed threshold. In demolition, the old-school hydraulic hammer is quietly giving way to primary pulverizers and cutter crushers that chew through reinforced concrete with a fairly quiet hydraulic crunch. In construction, the diesel engine is slowly being replaced by electric machines that purr rather than roar. We've successfully engineered the noise out of the environment. But while the industry is patting itself on the back for its newfound quietness, a much more sinister form of sound dampening has occurred. Because as the machines have grown inexorably quieter, so too has the workforce. There's a striking juxtaposition between the technology on site and the human beings operating it. At a time when the sector is gripped by a severe systemic skill shortage, logic dictates that the value of the individual worker should be at an all-time high. In any rational economic market, a scarcity of skilled labour grants those workers leverage, influence, and a voice. Instead, the demolition and construction workforce has never been quieter. The mechanism for this silencing is structural rather than technological. The widespread shift towards agency-based self-employed labour has transformed skilled artisans into disposable commodities. Operating on a precarious tightrope of short-term contracts, the modern site worker exists in a state of perpetual vulnerability. To raise a concern about safety, to question a target, or to suggest that working conditions are subpar is to risk a swift, unceremonious text message from an agency telling you not to bother showing up on a Monday. Even those fortunate enough to secure direct employment find themselves playing a game of survival, doing their utmost to not rock the boat. The historic safety nets have evaporated. There's no collective bargaining power to speak of, no centralised forum where grievances can be aired without fear of reprisal, and no broader representation. The workforce has been stripped of its collective weight and reduced to a collection of isolated individuals who now view themselves as entirely expendable. And this leads us to an uncomfortable question. In an industry that has grown so breathtakingly adept at silencing its equipment, is it really inconceivable that it's applied those same engineering principles to its people? Was the muting of the workforce merely an accidental byproduct of modern employment law, or was it a deliberate, strategic masterstroke? To understand how a workforce is silenced, you have to look at how a machine is baffled. You don't just stop the noise at the source, you trap it, absorb it, and isolate it. The corporate structure of modern construction does exactly that with human dissent. When a worker has a grievance, there's no longer a shop steward or a union representative to amplify it. Instead, the complaint is funneled through a labyrinth of digital HR portals, anonymous feedback apps, and third-party compliance agencies. Those systems aren't designed to resolve issues. They're designed to absorb them. They're the acoustic foam of corporate governance, ensuring that the sound of frustration never travels far enough to disturb the stakeholders or interrupt the flow of data. We've created an environment where compliance is synonymous with silence. The ideal worker is no longer just productive, they're acoustically neutral. They integrate seamlessly into the background, generating output without creating a single ripple on the corporate dashboard. The pinnacle of this engineering philosophy can be seen in the cab of the modern excavator. OEMs proudly boast about their state-of-the-art operator environments. They're marketed as ergonomic sanctuaries, climate-controlled, ergonomically sculpted, and sound-suppressed. When you sit inside one of these machines, the door seals with a premium, airtight thud. The chaotic reality of the site fades. You're completely isolated from the vibration of the tracks, the grind of the bucket, and the shouts of the ground staff. The industry tells us that this cocoon was designed to keep the world out. Tells us it was engineered to protect the operator from the harsh, damaging frequencies of the engine and the site. It's framed as an act of corporate care, a triumph of occupational health. But as you look out through the tinted and toughened glass at the site, a darker truth emerges. What if we've misunderstood the engineering brief entirely? What if the cab of a modern machine was never actually designed to keep the sound of the site out? What if it was designed instead to keep the voice of the operator in?